Hello, my dear friends. I'm Dr. Vaishali Bharambe, Professor Anatomy. And what are all these? Musicians. What are they doing in our video? And what is a musician's nerve? Ulnar nerve is also called as the musician's nerve. Why? If you want to find out, come. Let's study the ulnar nerve. So, I'm going to teach you the ulnar nerve by addressing a question which is very commonly asked in medical exams. Describe the anatomy of ulnar nerve under the following headings: formation, course relations, branches, applied anatomy. How do we address this? In this process, you will learn the ulnar nerve. So, let's begin by addressing the part 1, formation. So, we are at the brachial plexus, and you can see how the anterior divisions of upper and middle trunk form the lateral cord. All posterior divisions form the posterior cord, and the anterior division of the lower trunk forms the medial cord. We know that. Focusing our attention on the medial cord, okay, here is your medial cord. You can see how it gives rise to 5 nerves: medial pectoral nerve, medial cutaneous nerve of arm and forearm, medial root of median, and finally also the ulnar nerve, which is the nerve for today. So ulnar nerve is a branch of medial cord of brachial plexus. It's carrying fibers from C8 and T1. Note, this completes discussion on formation. At this point of time, you should be drawing a diagram of brachial plexus showing how the ulnar nerve is formed. Then only you will get the 3 marks that were given for formation. You can't just write it's a branch of medial cord and expect to get 3 entire marks for it. Remember that. Right. So formation is done. Let's go to course and relations. We're going to divide the course into course in axilla, in arm, in forearm and hand. So now here's the section through the axilla. This is pectoralis major, humerus and the teres major. So left side section. And what you're seeing is the ulnar nerve, which is the branch of medial cord brachial plexus, lying between the axillary artery and the axillary vein, slightly more posteriorly placed compared to medial cutaneous nerve of forearm. Okay. Note that ulnar nerve does not give any branches in axilla. Of course, all these nerves give rise to vasomotor twigs to local blood vessels. If you're enjoying this lecture, do please like, share and subscribe to my channel and hit that bell icon. Students, my effort is to make sure that optimum medical education in anatomy is available for students worldwide. If you find that you are coming to my channel repeatedly to educate yourself, then do please let me know in the comment section. It will encourage me to make more of these lectures for you. Also visit my website vbanatomy.com for downloadable notes, MCQs and much more. So here you are seeing the ulnar teres major, brachial artery, median nerve, and medial to both brachial artery and median nerve is my ulnar nerve. So it's entering into the arm lying medial to these 2 structures. As it descends down, somewhere in the middle of the arm, it pierces the medial intermuscular septum, see here, and descends down to come to lie behind the medial epicondyle, turns and begins to go forward into the forearm. It pierces the medial intermuscular septum, winds around the medial epicondyle and now enters into the forearm. Does it give any nerve in the arm? No, it does not give any branches in the arm. Ulnar nerve now enters the forearm. At this point, you can see it's lying in relation to the flexor digitorum profundus. Okay, it's quite deep. As it goes forwards, it's throughout supported on the medial side by flexor carpi ulnaris. Close to the wrist, it begins to have a lateral relation with the ulnar artery. Ulnar nerve in the forearm does give rise to branches. It gives rise to 1.5 motor branch, 1 branch to the flexor carpi ulnaris and half a branch to the medial 2 tendons of flexor digitorum profundus. So which two tendons? Tendons to these two digits. Tendon to the little finger, tendon to the ring finger. Please remember that because that's going to get applicable when you are doing applied aspects of ulnar nerve. It also gives rise to cutaneous branches called palmar cutaneous branch and dorsal cutaneous branch. It also gives rise to branches to the elbow joint, and terminal finally divides into superficial and deep nerves. So let's talk about palmar cutaneous branch. This is a branch arising in the middle of the forearm and supplying the skin over the hypothenar eminence. Just this much, okay? Does it supply the fingers? No, only the skin over the hypothenar eminence. The digits are supplied by branches of ulnar nerve later. What about dorsal cutaneous? Dorsal cutaneous branch supplies the skin over the dorsum of the hand, okay, over the medial side, over the medial two digits, but the distal part of these digits till the middle phalange are supplied by nerves supplying the palmar aspect. Dorsal supply typically extends till the fingers, but the nail beds, etc., are supplied by nerves from the anterior palmar aspect. Right. So, ulnar nerve now reaches the hand. It passes into the hand superficial to the flexor retinaculum. See, that's the trunk of the nerve, and it is passing lateral to the pisiform, superficial to the flexor retinaculum. Okay, dividing into deep and superficial branches. Throughout, laterally, it has a relation to the ulnar artery. So we now have a superficial branch and a deep branch. I'm just going to show you the relation. See, this is your ulnar nerve, this is your ulnar artery. They are passing superficial to the flexor retinaculum. And if you look carefully, a portion of the retinaculum is passing over them too, converting the space into a canal, which is called as the Guyon's canal. Okay, and this Guyon's canal is like a facial sheath that covers your ulnar artery and nerve together. So now, let's discuss the superficial branch of ulnar nerve. This is a superficial branch which gives rise to one branch to the palmaris brevis and then goes on to divide into palmar distal branch and common distal branch. Palmar distal branch, please use your hands. Palmar distal branch supplies the skin along the medial side of the little finger. Common palmar distal divides into palmar distal branches which supply adjacent sides of your ring and little finger. It also gives rise to a communication to the median nerve. So, superficial branch of ulnar nerve gives tricks to palmaris brevis, palmar skin of medial 1.5 digits. It crosses over to supply the same on the dorsal side till the middle phalange. It also supplies all the joints in relation, metacarpophalangeal, interphalangeal, blood vessels and pulp spaces. So that's the superficial branch. Let's now talk about the deep branch. Okay, I'm going to put up a separate diagram about how to draw the deep branch because otherwise it's difficult for you to even remember the muscles. Okay, so here you are seeing the deep branch. It is passing between the flexor distium minimi and abductor distium minimi, supplying both. Supplying and piercing the opponent's distium minimi, it passes forwards deep. Okay, supplying all the 4 palmar interossei, supplying all the 4 bipinnate dorsal interossei, then giving rise to branches that supply 3rd and 4th lumbrical, who supplies 1st and 2nd median nerve. Okay, and also giving a branch to the adductor pollicis and may supply a branch to flexor pollicis brevis. Okay, so that's your deep branch of ulnar nerve. Remember your 2 lumbricals and all the pollicis muscles are all supplied by the median nerve. So to summarize, enumerate the muscles supplied by deep branch of ulnar nerve. They are hypothenar group, flexor distium minimi, abductor distium minimi, opponent's distium. Okay, palmar and dorsal interossei all. Okay, all the 4 palmar interossei, all the 4 dorsal interossei. Lumbricals 3rd and 4th. Okay, and any other adductor pollicis. So that leaves out all the muscles of thenar which are supplied by the median nerve, and first and second lumbrical which are also supplied by median nerve. Sometimes flexor pollicis brevis is supplied by this. It gives articular twigs to the joints as well. So I'm going to give you some interesting lines in anatomy. So all intrinsic muscles of the hand are supplied by ulnar nerve except thenar muscles and first and second lumbricals, which are supplied by median nerve. Entire nerve supply in one sentence. Okay. Right. So this is a beautiful, very simple line diagram of ulnar nerve. Okay. You can see I've divided it into axilla, arm, forearm and hand. Very easy. Just draw a line and divide it. Okay. Now see, does it give a branch in axilla? No. It gives a branch in the arm, nerve to elbow joint. It gives 4 branches in the forearm. Flexor carpi ulnaris, flexor digitorum profundus medial to tendons, palmocutaneous branch, dorsal cutaneous branch. Okay. When you look at it like this, it's very easy to remember. When you try to, keep on memorizing different things, it becomes difficult. Use line diagrams to study, making your study quick, short and recallable, if there's a word like that. Finally, it enters into the hand to divide into superficial and deep branches, which we've recently studied, so I'm not going to revise it all over again. But line diagrams help you to remember very easily. Please use the line diagrams well. So most of the intrinsic muscles of the hand are extensively used when you are playing musical instruments like violin. And that is why your ulnar nerve is called as a musician's nerve. That's the answer to our question. And this is one single image showing you the ulnar nerve right from the point where it got formed to the point where it entered into the hand. Use this to get a broader picture of the nerve. If you're enjoying this lecture, do please like, share and subscribe to my channel and hit that bell icon. Please feel welcome to visit my website vbanatomy.com for downloadable notes, for solving MCQs and detailed lectures as well. So let's go to the applied aspects of ulnar nerve. We've done the nerve. Okay, I hope you've been enjoying this lecture. Let's now imagine, what if ulnar nerve was damaged? Ulnar nerve can be damaged at the cubital tunnel, at the Guyon's canal at the wrist, or below the hook of Hammett. In any of these places, this nerve can be damaged. So let's begin to understand what will happen in each of these cases. And suppose you are seeing that, it looks like ulnar nerve is damaged. You want to know where it is damaged. How will you differentiate these 3 conditions from each other? So let's begin with cubital tunnel. Question, what is cubital tunnel? The tunnel through which the ulnar nerve passes behind the medial epicondyle is a cubital tunnel. What happens? Why is it damaged in cubital tunnel? So if you recall, when you hit your hand on the table, you feel that little electric sensation. So that's actually ulnar nerve getting damaged at the cubital tunnel. So your elbow is such a, joint that you keep moving. So it's very likely to hit something or the other, damaging your ulnar nerve. Right. So what are the effects? If the ulnar nerve is damaged, what are the effects? Think common sense. Okay. I know it gives 1.5 branches in forearm. I know it supplies all muscles of the hand except so and so. So all the muscles that are paralyzed, you already know. What you have to know is what is the effect of it. So motor effects, paralysis or weakness of forearm muscles, flexor carpi ulnaris is gone. If it's gone, flexion is a little bit hampered and medial half of flexor digitorum profundus is injured. In the hand, all intrinsic muscles are gone. Resulting deformity is called as ulnar claw hand. Okay. How does the claw form? Clawing of ring and little finger, loss of finger abduction, adduction, weak grip. See, your flexor digitorum profundus is gone. You're not going to be able to grip anything very easily. And wasting of hypothenar. These muscles are no longer used, right? So wasting of hypothenar muscles will happen. So your patient will come with a ulnar claw hand. Let's explain each of these now. Flexor carpi ulnaris is gone. You're not going to be able to flex and adduct. So what will happen when you try to flex? There is natural abduction movement. Medial half of flexor digitorum profundus is paralyzed. So the flexion at the distal interphalangeal joint is lost. So when you lift up a glass, that last bit of flexion of your distal phalange is not there. So your grip is weak. What about intrinsic muscles of hand? When intrinsic muscles of hand are gone, introshi are paralyzed. So you can neither abduct nor adduct your digits. Okay. Patient can be asked to shake hand. Asking your patient to abduct the fingers, he cannot do it. Okay. You can see how I am abducting quite comfortably. Thankfully, my introshi are intact. Okay. Or you can carry out a paper test. Okay. So, for example, now take a look. Okay. You're asking your patient to hold this little tissue firmly in the hand. Okay. So you're asking your patient to hold the tissue firmly and then you try to pull it away. See how firmly my fingers are hanging on to that tissue. This is paper test. Why? My adductors are intact. My palmar introshi are intact. Okay. So introshi have this. Why is claw hand seen? Understand that when your muscles of the hand are paralyzed, especially your introshi and lumbricals, what is their natural action? Do this. Okay. Flexion at metacarpophalangeal joint, extension at interphalangeal joint. This is the action of introshi and lumbricals. Because they are paralyzed, your hand goes into extension at metacarpophalangeal joint and flexion at interphalangeal joint. Claw, isn't it? So what are you losing? Understand it again. Loss of flexion at metacarpophalangeal joint. This is lost. So extension will happen. Loss of extension at interphalangeal joint. So there will be flexion. Claw. This is, so whatever you lose, the hand goes in opposite of that. So loss of flexion at metacarpophalangeal joint, your hand goes into extension. Loss of extension at interphalangeal joint, your hand goes into flexion. It's simple. Producing the characteristic clawing. Okay. What about sensory effects? Now see, medial 1.5 digits on the palmar and dorsal side will lose sensation. They will become numb, a feeling of tingling, numbness, pins and needles kind of feeling will be there. Okay. The patient will show you Froment's sign positive. What is Froment's sign? Again, we get the freshest paper in place. What you do is you ask your patient to grip a paper between his index finger and the thumb finger like this. Which muscle is going to help me here? The adductor pollicis. But my ulnar nerve is paralyzed. Adductor is not working, right? So what does the patient do? You do that and he finds that the paper is sliding, right? So what the patient does is he brings his thenar muscles in place and he begins to grip the paper by flexing his pollux digit. This is Froment's sign positive. Okay. Why is he having to do this? Because his adductor pollicis is paralyzed. So patient's precision movements will become weak. His hand fine movements will become weak. He will find himself not having adequate hand control. All these are functional problems related to ulnar nerve paralysis. So now let's talk about the same ulnar nerve getting paralyzed in the Guyon's canal. See, this is Guyon's canal. Remember, we talked about it earlier. So if the nerve is compressed over here, then what are the effects you will see? This injury is quite common in what is sometimes called handlebar injury. So you've been riding a bicycle for so long that your ulnar nerve is getting compressed against the bar of the cycle handle. Okay, continuous pressure can cause that to happen. Remember, ulnar nerve passes superficial to the flexor retinaculum, so likely to get damaged easily. So what are the motor effects now? The motor effects are paralysis of muscles of the hand as usual, hypothenar muscles, interossei, medial to lumbricals, adductor pollicis. Deep head of flexor pollicis brevis also maybe. But we have to note that flexor carpi ulnaris and flexor digitorum profundus medial 2 tendons are actually functioning now because the injury is here. So the ulnar nerve had time to supply these two muscles. So resulting deformity is excessive clawing. Remember, hand was naturally going into claw when there was a damage to the ulnar nerve at cubital fossa. But because these two muscles are intact, flexor digitorum profundus decides to help in the flexion, causing the flexion to become more, causing a severe claw hand. This is called as an ulnar paradox. Amazing, isn't it? That when the injury is more distal, the effect of injury is exaggerated. You would think that if it's more distal, that it will be less damage. Instead, patient comes with a severe ulnar claw hand. Okay, this is called ulnar paradox. There is clawing of ring and the little finger, and of course, the rest stays just the same. But what about sensory effects? Will I see loss of sensation on the palmar aspect of my hand or on the dorsal aspect? I won't, because the nerves palmar cutaneous and dorsal cutaneous were given before the Guyon's canal. So this portion and this portion is intact, but the skin over the digits itself is numb or loses sensation. So, differences between cubital tunnel and Guyon's canal have been given here. You can go through it. I won't explain it to you again. And now finally, what happens if the nerve, directly the deep branch of ulnar nerve is damaged? Okay, then you will see no sensory loss. You will see the same motor loss as Guyon's canal, but you will not see any sensory loss. Skin over the fingers as well as of the palm is completely correctly supplied. So that completes our ulnar nerve. Please remember, separate lectures are uploaded for radial nerve and median nerve. Also, please watch those as well on VB Anatomy. Link is given in the description section. So, we discussed formation, cause and relations in the axilla, arm, forearm and hand. We discussed branches of each part in the hand, superficial branch, deep branch, and then we discussed a single line diagram, and we also discussed the applied aspects in the cubital fossa, Guyon's canal, ulnar paradox, and lesion to the deep branch of ulnar nerve. So the question we started with was this. Ask yourself, will you be able to answer this to score maximum marks? So look at the marks given to a question when you are attempting it and make sure you have written enough to justify them giving you marks for it. Students, visit my website for more such detailed lectures, downloadable notes, solving MCQs as well. I look forward to seeing you there. Link is in the description section. Thank you. Bye.